Will Bernard from a new album called Blue Plate Special, one of our favorites here on the Burnt Toast Show. We have Will Bernard on the phone right now. Will, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty good.
You live in New York now.
Yeah, it's a rainy day in Brooklyn here. I'm keeping warm here, drinking a little coffee.
Cool.
My
cool.
apartment.
Well, we just love this new album. I know we've played a lot of your stuff from Stanton Moore and T.J. Kirk and so on like that. Why don't you tell us a little bit now? When you grew up in California, right?
Yeah, I'm from Berkeley, California.
Okay.
And I had a real rich, varied set of influences that I drew on that were a little confusing, but
well, that's
finally like.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about the new album is that it sort of jumps all over the place from it's not really hung up on one sound. I really like that about the album. And I was wondering, I was going to ask you anyway, who you grew up listening to, because there's slide guitar on here and there's stuff that sounds like, Grant Green or Wes Montgomery or a lot of different folks. So, how did that come about, and who were you into coming up?
Well, I started out really getting into rock. That was my first love. But then I really got into jazz in high school. Went to Berkeley High, where a lot of great jazz musicians went, and I was there with Peter Alphabom and Stephen Bernstein, and being around those guys and others, I got pretty far into jazz and a lot of avant-garde jazz, which led me to classical music. Getting a degree in classical music.
All right.
From UC Berkeley.
That's definitely a different trip from most jazz guitarists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I've always been just kind of followed whatever caught my fancy at the time, and I ended up playing in a lot of bands to make money that were, bands like klezmer and Iranian, wedding bands and French musette, cafe music bands. And so I feel like, when people say what are my influences, it's kind of hard to say, well, there's these two influences that really made me who I am. But this record, is, in terms of how it could be, it's a fairly focused record.
Yeah, I think
mind.
The overall sound is, you can tell it's the same band and the same sort of direction, but you just cover so much ground. I mean, I'm not used to hearing slide guitar on a jazz album. So tell us about some of the. You said you played in different types of bands, but tell us some of your more the professional experiences that you've had, because I know you played with a lot of folks.
Oh yeah, well, it's all professional, but.
Oh, I know.
One of the first
as far as
groups
recording,
that had a recording contract was Peter Applebaum's Hieroglyphics Ensemble,
mm-hmm.
which and the first record we did was a Don Cherry record. Don Cherry, the trumpet player, was in the original Ornette Coleman quartet.
Right, with Charlie Hayden and Billy Higgins, yeah, or Ed Blackwell, yeah.
But the record we did was called Multi-Culti.
That was in the late 80s, wasn't it? That was in the late 80s, something like that?
It was 19. Yeah. So that really helped Peter, get the hieroglyphics known, being associated with Don Cherry. And that record, Multi-Culti, was kind of a indication of the different, cultural influences that we all had, and that was attracted Don Cherry to the hieroglyphics, because Peter was influenced by a lot of African music and Afro-Cuban music,
mm-hmm.
Moroccan music, and we always, we really were into the whole melting pot idea of the Bay Area.
Yeah, so you were able to use all the stuff that you did as far as the more unusual gigs, those that actually came into play with what you were doing with that band then right away.
Yeah, very true. Mm-hmm. And then after that, Lee Townsend, who was working with Peter, said he wanted to work with me. So he was shopping demos for me, and I brought him this demo of this band, T.J. Kirk, that I was starting to play with,
Right.
and he was pretty interested in that. And
That involved Charlie Hunter and
it.
Scott Amendola, right? We play both their stuff on the show.
Yeah, Charlie Hunter, Scott Amendola, and John Schott.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting a Warner Brothers deal with that, which was a real nice,
And what was the basis on that
kick
album?
in the pants.
Yeah, that was T.J. Kirk. It was the music of Thelonious Monk, James Brown, and Ross Unroll and Kirk, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So sort of all at the same time.
Yeah, we did some creative organization with mixing the three composers.
All right.
We might have a James Brown groove with a Thelonious Monk melody, or go to a Ross Unroll and Kirk bridge.
Right. Yeah.
We kind of mix and matched all the.
How did you come up with that idea? What was the genesis of that?
It was actually Charlie Hunter's idea. One day I was giving him a ride somewhere, and he said, "Oh, you want to be in a band?" It's called James T. Kirk.
James T. Kirk. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
And then, of course, we couldn't use that name.
No, there was definitely some copyright, infringement happening
But
there.
originally it was James T. Kirk for the first
All right.
over 6 months or however long it took.
All right. Well, and then after that,
So those are some pretty.
yeah, we're gonna play some stuff from
interesting.
that band in a little while here. We'll play that in the next set after we're done, talking to you, and we'll run some of that because that was a great band. I always really enjoyed those. You did three albums? Were there two?
3 albums, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's 2 of them are out of print. The Warner Brothers ones are out of print, but you can still get them on Amazon. And then the third one is on Rope-A-Dope, and that's a live record, and you can still get that one.
Cool. Yeah, the great band. Yeah. So after that, you moved on to.
Well, I did my. I started right around that time trying to be a band leader, which I've been doing ever since.
Mm-hmm.
Around when the second record came out, and then, but I've been involved with a lot of other. I toured for I think 2.5 years with Robert Walters' 20th Congress.
And you're still involved with Robert
We
Walter.
used to call that the Evil Congress, as opposed to the 20th Congress, because we had Joe Russo on drums from
From the duo, yeah.
Benevento Russo duo, and myself, and it was quite different from the original 20th Congress conception.
Right. That's going to sound it's going to sound a lot different than the Grey Boy All Stars, I think, with that particular lineup. Yeah, it's going to have its own personality.
And then from there, we did all these super groups in New Orleans and various things, and ended up into the Stanton Moore Trio.
Yeah, which we play a lot of on the show.
We've been doing that for like 3 years, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, so, and you it seems like you and Stanton. I know Robert Walter missed some shows because he's back with the Grey Boy All Stars, but you did some gigs with he and Will Blades this year, right? As far as the trio goes, it's still Robert Walter in the trio, though, right?
He's the official guy. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But we've been using different organ players. We did 1 week with Dr. Lonnie Smith as the organ player.
Wow, I bet that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a blast. Yeah, we drove around, driving around the South with the doctor.
Yeah.
Listening to a bunch of stories, and he's one of my heroes.
Absolutely. One of our big favorites here on the show. Yeah. So we're going to play something else from the. Speaking of Dr. Lonnie Smith and sort of an old school kind of feel, we'll play something new from the disc. This is called Fast Fun. I think this is kind of reminiscent of a lot of old organ group stuff from the 60s or early 70s. And hang out, and we'll talk to Will Bernard a little bit more here in just a few minutes. But right now, this is Fast Fun from the album Blue Plate Special by Will Bernard. A great album. We'll come back and talk about the recording of this album and the great all-star lineup that's on it here in just a few minutes. This is Fast Fun from Blue Plate Special.